Hi grade 9, how are you? I hope you all are okay. Today we will study asexual reproduction in plants. The last session we talked about sexual reproduction in plants, but today we will talk about asexual reproduction in plants. Asexual reproduction in plants. Some plants have developed a special type of asexual reproduction in plants, and it's called vegetative reproduction. What is the meaning of vegetative reproduction? It is a type of reproduction. Takes place by parts of roots, stems, leaves, or buds. We have two kinds of vegetative reproduction. Number one, natural vegetative reproduction. Number two, artificial vegetative reproduction. Number one, natural vegetative reproduction. It takes place by many ways such as reproduction by rhizomes, corms, tubers of shoots. We will study only one of them, reproduction by tubers. What is the meaning of tuber? Tuber, it is a swollen part from a root like sweet potato or a stem like potatoes. If we cut a tuber of potato into multiple slices, where each slice should contain a bud or more, then irrigate them for a week. As we see in the image, the observation will be as follows. Some buds grow forming a root system which grows down. Other buds grow forming a shoot system which grows up. After some days, the old tuber changes into a plant that carries many new tubers, as we see in the image. This is the reproduction by tubers. Number 2. Artificial vegetative reproduction. It takes place by four ways: cutting, grafting, tissue culture, layering. We will study the first three ways only. Number 1. Reproduction by cutting. Cut. What is the meaning of cut? It is a part of root, stem, or leaf that taken from a plant for reproduction. It is common for the cut to be a branch carrying many buds. If we get some cuts of different plants like grapes, roses, or sugarcane, then cultivate them in a pot or in a can full of soil, as we see in the image. Such a bud or more should appear above the soil surface. Then irrigate the cut for 2 weeks. We will observe that the buds buried inside the soil grow to form the root system of the plant, but the buds above the soil surface grow to form the shoot system of the plant, as we see in the image. This is the reproduction by cutting. Number 2. Reproduction by grafting. In reproduction by grafting, an individual plant which containing more than one bud, known as sign or graft, is selected to be placed on another individual known as the stalk, as we see in the image. We have two methods of grafting. Number 1. Grafting by attachment, in which the sign is attached to the stalk. Example in mango trees. Number 2. Grafting by wedge, in which the sign in the form of wedge, pencil shaped, is inserted into a cleft in the stalk. Example like large trees. As we see in the image, these are the methods of grafting: grafting by attachment and grafting by wedge. We have an important question in this point. Give reason. In both methods, the sign and the stalk are tightly tied together. To make the sign feeds on the juice of the stalk. This is very important. Reproduction by grafting is used only between highly similar plant species, such as orange and nareng or bitter orange, apples and pears, peaches and apricots. Give reason. The reproduction by grafting can't be used between orange and peaches because this kind of reproduction is used only between highly similar plant species. This is the reproduction by grafting. Number 3. Tissue culture. It is a process of multiplying a small part of a plant to get many identical parts. How to make tissue culture? Number 1. The tissue is separated from the upper part of the stem. Then the tissue is placed in a nutritive medium containing nutrients and hormones. Number 3. The new plant starts to grow till certain size. Number 4. The new plant is then transferred to the soil to grow normally, as we see in the image. Give reason. Tissue culture is considered from the important modern ways to increase crops because it is a process of multiplying a small part of a plant to get many identical parts. This is the tissue culture. Now we will see a video that differentiates between sexual reproduction in plants and asexual reproduction in plants.
One pleasant evening, Spiky was enjoying the weather in a park. He saw a gardener planting rose stems into the soil. He thought to himself, aren't we supposed to sow seeds to grow a plant? What do you think? Will the rose stems grow into new plants? The answer is yes. Many plants can be grown without seeds. The process of producing offspring is called reproduction. There are two modes of reproduction in plants: sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. The fusion of male and female gametes is called sexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction starts with pollination, which is the transfer of pollen grains from the anther to the stigma of a flower. The male gametes of a flower are carried in pollen grains, and the female gametes are carried in ovules. Most flowers have both male and female parts in one flower. Such flowers are called bisexual. They prefer self-pollination. On the other hand, some plant species have separate male and female flowers. Such flowers are called unisexual flowers. These flowers require cross-pollination for reproduction. For example, tomatoes and peas have bisexual flowers, while cucumbers have flowers that are unisexual. When pollen falls onto a flower stigma, it forms a pollen tube that leads to the flower's ovary. There, the pollen cells fuse with the female gametes in the ovule to form a seed. This seed carries a baby plant called an embryo inside of it. Each time a seed is planted into the soil and treated with appropriate conditions, it grows into a seedling, which eventually grows into a new plant. Sexual reproduction happens inside of a flower. Therefore, flowers are the reproductive parts of plants. Oh, but I bet you're wondering, what is asexual reproduction? Well, we know that plants have roots, stems, and leaves. These parts are called the vegetative parts of a plant. When a new plant is formed using these parts, the process is called vegetative propagation or asexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, the fusion of male and female gametes is not required. Let's see how asexual reproduction takes place. There are different methods of vegetative reproduction: cutting, layering, grafting, and budding. Let's have a look at each method in detail. Spiky saw the method of cutting in the park. The rose plant can be grown by cutting off part of its stem with 2 or more nodes and then planting it in the ground. This stem will grow into a new plant. In some plants, you don't need to cut the stem. Instead, a branch can bury itself in the soil while it is still attached to the parent plant. This branch is called a layer or a runner. The layer develops new roots and leaves and eventually grows into a new plant. This is known as layering. Did you know that grass is propagated by layering? The most interesting type of vegetative reproduction is grafting. In grafting, a twig from one tree is joined to a stem from another tree of the same kind. Grafting is most often done with fruit trees, like citrus and mango trees, to produce new and improved varieties. Then we have budding. What do you think budding means? Budding is like grafting, except that a bud is used instead of a twig. The bud is joined to the base of a young plant, and the rest of the host plant is cut off. Later, the bud grows into its own kind of plant. Budding is also done in fruit trees like peach and plum trees. Let's summarize. The process of producing offspring is called reproduction. There are 2 methods of reproduction in plants: sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, flowers are the organs of reproduction. During pollination, pollen grains, which contain male gametes, fuse with the female gametes in the ovary. Seeds are formed at the end of sexual reproduction. In asexual reproduction, vegetative parts of a parent plant directly produce offspring. There is no need for fusion between male and female gametes. Examples of this include cutting, layering, grafting, and budding. No seeds are formed at the end of asexual reproduction.